Hi guys, today I'm going to be servicing my Abarth Punto Evo. I'm going to be doing the oil filter and the spark plugs. I'm going to be taking the Multiair filter out and cleaning it with some carb cleaner. If you want to see how easy it is and save yourself some money, stay tuned and I'll see you after the intro. So the steps I'm about to show you is pretty much the same as it would be for any kind of punto and probably most Abarths as well, and pretty much every other model of car. It'll just be different actual components like the spark plugs, the oil filter and the oil. You need to make sure it's make and model specific to your car, but pretty much everything that I'm about to show you, you can transfer into any other car really. There's going to be the odd one that's going to be different where the location of the oil filter will be and stuff like that, but pretty much you can follow this and translate it to whatever model you've got. Okay, so I put my car up on these ramps because my car's too low to actually get a jack under it without doing that. I think they're about 30 quid on eBay. I'll definitely look at investing in some of those if you've got a low car. So the first thing we're going to do is jack it up. So the car's jacked up. The next thing we're going to do is put an axle stand underneath the car. You should never work on a car with just a jack, you should always put an axle stand under. Just always make sure it's on some part of the subframe that's firm and not just like somewhere random that's going to end up crumpling like your side skirts or something like that. So we're just going to lower the jack down so that the car's actually sitting on the axle stand and not on the jack. So the first step we're going to do is we're going to drain the oil. Before we actually take the sump plug off, we're just going to take the oil cap off, the filler cap, just so it doesn't cause any suction. And when you take the sump plug off, the oil is going to drain out the engine a lot better. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to take the sump plug off and drain the oil from the bottom of the engine. So the oil filler cap's been removed. We're now under the car. As you look at the bottom of the engine, this is the sump. So right in the middle of there is the sump plug. It's 17mm. It may be quite tight, so you may have to get a breaker bar, and I would advise using a 6-sided socket as well so you don't round the sump plug off. I've made it a bit more difficult from having this DNA strut bracing as well because it's kind of in the way now, so I've had to put an extension bar on my ratchet. I had already cracked that off. So you want to get your drip tray in place, and then just slowly start to unwind your sump plug. Just make sure you've got a good grip on it, because if you end up dropping it in the drip tray, you've got to stick your hand in there to get it out. And when you're doing this as well, make sure the engine isn't really hot, because otherwise the oil is going to be really hot and it's going to burn you. Just bear in mind as well, there should be a crush washer that's on the sump plug, so don't let that fall in the drip tray either. So the engine oil is now draining. We're going to leave this until we've done the rest of the service and then come back to it so that it's got time for all the oil to come out the engine. There's always going to be a little bit left, probably about 100-200ml left in the engine, maybe a little bit more, but you just want to get as much out as you can so you've got a nice clean fresh oil in there. Okay, so while the oil's draining, we're just going to come up to the top of the engine. We're going to change the spark plugs now. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 coil packs. So we need to remove those. We're going to take this breather pipe off as well because it's in the way. It's just going to make it easier to access the spark plugs. So we're going to start by taking this bolt off that's holding the breather pipe on. It's a 10mm. This will differ depending on what kind of setup you've got for the breather pipe, but I'm just going to remove this little Jubilee clip just to relieve the pressure so I can take the the breather pipe off. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts we need to remove to get the spark plugs out. I'm just going to remove the 10mm bolts that are on the coil packs. You don't need to remove the actual leads that go into them, you just need to take the bolts off that are all the way along. Okay, so you can see on coil number 1 there's some oil's gone down into the actual spark plug tube. It's just from where I've spilled oil into the oil filler cap and it's gone down into that spark plug tube, but there's nothing really to worry about. Just need to give it a wipe, give it a clean before you put it back in. So the next step, we're going to be removing the spark plugs. We're going to use a 10mm spark plug socket. Just make sure before you start trying to remove the old one that you check on the new one to make sure it's the right fit, because there's 2 different sizes for spark plug socket. You don't want to end up rounding it off while it's in there. So I'm just going to show you a little trick quickly. If you've got a non-magnetic spark plug tool like I have, some of them are magnetic, so as you pull the socket out, the spark plug comes out with it, but mine doesn't. So if you use the really small inside of the ratchet extension with a really small hole, you can poke it down over the top of the spark plug. And as you raise it up, just pull it to the side like that, just so you're putting pressure on the inside of the cylinder, then you can just grab the spark plug. Okay, so we're now going to put the new spark plugs in. I'm just going to do the same thing as I was doing earlier with the small extension from the ratchet. Just put slight pressure on it so it doesn't drop down and end up damaging the spark plug, just so it's seated down there. Now we're just going to tighten them all up. Just be very gentle on the first couple of turns because you don't want to end up cross-threading it. So just make sure that it is actually not fighting back and giving you any pressure, to make sure it is actually seated as you're doing it. So when it comes to tightening the spark plug, you literally just want to nip it up so that there's resistance on the actual spark plug, and you want to go 1/4 to 1/2 a turn just to nip it up. I would say more like 1/4 of a turn, you don't want to over tighten it. That's all the spark plugs in, so I'm just going to give this coil a quick clean, get all the excess oil off of it. So the coil is going to go back in now. Just make sure you're putting them back in the original one that it came out of. Don't mix them up, don't put 1 in 2 or 2 in 3 or anything like that. Just make sure they're going in the correct cylinder as you're putting them back in. Just want to push on top of the actual coil back like that, just to make sure that it's properly seated over the spark plug. Just double check them all, just give them a good push down. When you put the bolt back in, it's going to press it down and hold it, so don't worry about that too much. Now we're just going to put the bolts back in over the coil pack. So now the breather pipe can go back on. And the bolt is just holding the actual breather pipe in place. So if you can see just down there underneath the intake pipe, that's the oil filter. That's the housing just there. It's a size 27mm. So the adapter will be going on this bigger size socket. So if you're trying to use this on there and you got it on the ratchet, you can be pushing up against the intake like that, and it's going to be very difficult to do it. So the way I found is easier is if you take the smaller size extension for the medium size ratchet and then get the adapter for the medium into the large, you can see that becomes shorter. So imagine if that socket was on there, it'd be even longer. So it just gives you a little bit more room, and you can put it on the medium ratchet and get down there a lot easier. Okay, so I went to get my breaker bar and I can't actually find it because it was actually really tight. So what I've done is I've just got a bit of metal pole, just put it over the end of the ratchet, just to give it a bit more leverage, and then I was able to just crack it off. So now that it's slightly loosened, I can just undo it now. So remember what I was saying about earlier, when you take the oil filter off, that the oil is going to come out of the filter and drop down onto the floor. So if you look down this gap here, you'll see the drip tray. Is now underneath it. So as you're undoing the oil filter housing, there will be quite a lot of pressure. You just want to unwind it slowly, and when you start to feel it loosen up, you should be able to do it by hand. I'm just going to take the ratchet out. I'm just letting all the oil drip out of the oil filter now. Just leave it for about 10, 15, 20 seconds until it's not dripping anymore. So that's the oil filter. Just want to pop it out of the housing, and that's it. So we're going to put the new one in now. So on the housing, you've got this little rubber seal, so just get a screwdriver or something like that. And you just want to pry it off. So most oil filters that have this kind of housing will come with a new ring. So just make sure to change that. Then just put the new one on. And then just goes in that little groove down there at the bottom. Make sure it's in all the way around. And the new oil filter, these little plug things at the bottom, just go down into the housing. So when it's like that, it's caught on the bottom of it. That's all you want to do. So that's your oil filter in. Go and put it back in the car. So I'm just going to tighten this up with the socket, and then you're good to go. You don't want to go too tight, just nip it up. Doesn't need to be mega tight. So the next step is to take out the multi-air filter and give it a clean. I'm not going to do the whole process here because I've already made a video. I'm going to link that in the description down below of how to remove the multi-air filter, how to replace it. But basically it's down here behind this cam belt cover. I'm just going to take it out, give it a quick clean with some carb cleaner, and then we're going to put some oil in the car. So you can see how dirty it is already. So I'm just going to give it a quick clean with some carb cleaner. And just leave it to sit like that for a couple of minutes, just to let all the clean drain back out. Okay, so it's just starting to rain now, so I'm going to have to make this quick. When you're talking about multi-air system, you need to make sure it's the correct oil, because the multi-air unit itself is very temperamental. So over the last couple of years, Castrol Edge 5W40 is the go-to one for the multi-air units now. When you get it, you need to make sure, don't know if you can see it there, ACEA C3 5W40 fully synthetic. This is the oil that you need to use if you're using a multi-air system. It's been debated for the last few years what you should use, Miller's and all these other ones, but this seems to be the best one for the multi-air, not the Selenia. The Selenia has been found to leave deposits in the engine over a long time, and it just degrades quickly in the engine and ends up messing up the multi-air system. So this is the oil we're going to use. For this particular engine, it's 3.75 litres, including the oil filter. So we're going to fill the oil up now. If you haven't got a funnel, I've used a Dr Pepper bottle, and I've literally just cut the bottom off of it, so it's acting like a funnel. Just make sure there's no contamination in there, make sure you give it a good clean out. You don't want sugar in your engine, and you don't want water in there either. So this is a 5 litre bottle, so I'm just going to fill it up to 3.75 litres. So just leave the car to sit for about 10 minutes or so, and then let the engine run for 5 minutes, wait for all the oil to go into the oil filter and all the way around the engine. Take it for a drive for about 5 minutes or so, and then let the car cool down for half an hour. Then check your oil level. There's no point doing it now, because obviously the levels are all going to be not how they should be, because the oil hasn't sat in the engine. So just do that, check the oil again, and then adjust it how you need to. Okay, so that's the service done. The only thing I haven't shown you is how to do the air filter. I don't have the original air box with a panel filter in it, so obviously I couldn't show you that. I'm going to be doing a video on how to clean the actual foam filter itself. Ram Air do a kit of how to clean it. It's about £8 online, so I'm going to do that as a separate video. If you want to see how to do the multi-air filter, like I said, there is a video that I've done already, so I'm going to link that in the description down below. I hope you've enjoyed this video and you found it helpful. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.